I say chingus, it's your girl Kathleen, aka Castodine, aka Sorin, and we are back for another episode of Sorin's Soapbox. Get into it, get into it. What's going on, family? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back with another episode of Soapbox Soapbox. Here we talk about all things love, life, and the plot twist that comes with both. First and foremost, for all of my new listeners, I want to welcome y'all. Thank you for coming on in, for joining your girl, and checking out my podcast. I appreciate it. We love new people around here, so come on in, come on in. If you are a returning listener, what's up, family? How you doing? How your mama and them? Come on in, kick off your shoes, relax your feet, grab you something to drink, whether it's water, some tea, some coffee. I'm a matcha drinker myself. You know what I mean? Grab you something to drink and just come on in. So we can just go ahead and have us a nice little chat, a nice little get together, and jump on into today's episode. Child. How is the new year treating y'all? Happy New Year. You can continue to say Happy New Year until January 31st. How is 2026 treating y'all so far? For me, child, I said it in the last episode, 2026 came in and has put their foot on my neck. And apparently, we gonna see how long that foot stays on my neck. But overall, 2026 has been good. It's starting to get cold, y'all. By the time I release this episode, we are expecting a severe weather storm. They are talking about snow. They are talking about ice. They are talking about 20-mile-per-hour winds over here. Now, let me be honest. I'm from Jersey, okay? I remember... I'm about to tell on my age. I remember the blizzard of 96. I remember Hurricane Sandy and Irene. You know what I mean? I have been through quite a bit of storms, but I don't know if it's just because people out here and we're landlocked. I don't know, but the way they are talking about this storm, it is as if it's like the worst storm that could have ever come through here. Because I think they're saying the storm is supposed to hit like Oklahoma, Texas, and go all the way up to like the East Coast, so like New York, Jersey, like they're talking about Massachusetts. All of them are supposed to be hit with like piles and piles of snow. I don't know how true that is, because sometimes they be saying this and then it's literally like nothing. Obviously, better to be safe than sorry, always. But yeah, they talking about, I think for us, they're estimating between 5 to 10 inches of snow. Originally, it was like 3 to 4, and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. But here, ice is a really big issue. And so they're just like, yeah, make sure you stock up, make sure you have this, that, and the third. So, child, we're just gonna get into it. Normally, I start off the episode with a segment called Sodian's Life Update. So we're just gonna jump right on in and, you know, jump in, jump out, turn yourself about. We're just gonna jump into my life updates. But yeah, they're talking about snow. So, child, let me tell y'all something. BT bum deal. So the other day, my sister and I went to Walmart because I'm like, okay, if it actually gets bad, let's make sure we are prepared. I'm like, let's get some flashlights. Let's get a little gas butane stove in case we need to like cook and we don't have any electricity. We tried to get like a little power station, but child, I'm not paying like $100 to $200 for something that may or may not happen. Again, obviously taking necessary precautions as best, but the way my money is, I ain't got it, okay? Again, so I'm like, I'm gonna make do with what I have. So I'm like, we're gonna get some extra batteries, we're gonna get some candles, we're gonna get some lanterns and stuff like that so that we have some sort of power. Make sure all of our power banks are charged, all the things, just in case. My prayer is that we don't lose electricity, we don't lose any power. So we step into the Wally world, child. This dog, which I believe was a Doberman Pinscher, just ran all like up into the store. Now, this dog followed behind somebody. So I thought it was like their guide dog, their emotional dog or whatever, emotional support dog. Y'all, this was a random dog off the street that ran into the people's Walmart, and was running up and down the aisles, just acting like a kid in a candy store. I mean, When I tell you God protected me, because we was nowhere near the dog. Like, we saw the dog run in and then the dog just completely ran off into another direction. But this dog was running wild in the people's Walmart. And you hear people screaming, you hear people yelling. I said, where's security? Security, where? Like, I am confusion. Meanwhile, my sister and I are in the outdoor area. I ain't never been camping. I don't know nothing about this camping gear. I'm just trying to survive what possibly could be, a blizzard apocalypse. I don't know. It could be nothing. It could just be flurries and we bought all this stuff for nothing. But at the same time, again, I don't want to be caught scared and unawares, and then here we are. But y'all, the dog is running around. Apparently the dog, because he's scared and people running after it trying to chase it, he done crapped in the aisles and stuff. It just was a mess. I said, this is why the people stopped shopping at Walmart and was upset when we had to boycott Target, because this is the ghetto. As Nene Leakes said, the ghetto, the ghetto, the ghetto. Because what in the world? I said, I will never go to this Walmart again, okay? First of all, like, we have a neighborhood Walmart, and so it's just like groceries and food with like, some like essentials when it comes to medical stuff, but it doesn't have clothes and everything. So we was going to this super Walmart. I said, I will never, ever go to this Walmart again, because that was the most ghettoest thing I had ever experienced in my life. Child, I was like, I don't even think... my flowers were gasted, to say the least. But yeah, so we've been prepping for that. Yeah, this is probably also the healthiest I have felt in the month of January, because I talked about it in my last episode that usually in this month, I am as sick as all get out. I just would be in the bed and be out for the count. And the fact that I have been up and about and moving, I said, oh, them sinuses was trying to take your girl out. And I think I mentioned this last time, but this has been an issue I've had for as long as I can remember, for like years. Like, and when I say years, like, I mean, I feel like at least since 2016, if not longer, I have been suffering from this. And the reason why I can gauge that time, because I remember specifically like when it was like time for me to get ready to go to Korea, that was like the top of 2020. I think like come November, December, I had become extremely sick. This is not peak COVID, but like COVID was like on the horizon and people didn't know, like people were saying it was coming from Asia, but I think it was because the Wahite them was going over to like Europe and Asia, and because they're salop and they don't be, you could look up what salop means, but because they're not necessarily, they're hygiene averse, I think they came back and brought stuff, and then that's how we ended up where we are. But I digress. But I just remember being sick, and I was like, I'm afraid that when I get over to Korea, they're going to think I have COVID and either put me in quarantine or like turn me away. And I was like, I'm trying to leave America behind. Like, I'm trying to like step into a whole new world like Ariel. And if they turn me away, this might be my 13th reason. Like, I'm not joking. So like for 3 months, I just had a cough that wouldn't go away. I just felt like terrible. But because this was like all new and everything was virtual, I didn't have to be around the kids. And obviously we were masking and stuff. But now I look back and I was like, girl, it was your allergies and sinuses the entire time, the whole time, the whole time, the whole time. And I'm just beside myself. Anyways, so this is probably like the best I have felt in the winter months. I still have my down days, and I think that's just mainly like because out here the winds be terrible. Like we be getting like 10 to 20 mile per hour winds, and because of that, that's just blowing all types of like God knows what in the air. And because my allergies and my sinuses are effed up, I'll go home and I'll be like, oh my God, I feel terrible. And so I just gotta take extra doses of my medicine. But I can't believe how good I feel right now. And I'm telling you, I don't take it for granted, because when you are someone who just routinely gets sick around the wintertime, and like I said, I'm sick for 3 to 4 months at a time, not no little 72-hour cold. Like I'm sick 3-4 months at a time. So the fact that like we are talking about, as of today, January 22nd, and I'm sitting here talking to y'all, it is a miracle, child. It's just crazy that it took me to age 38 to figure out that my issue is sinuses all along. And that I never put two and two together, but I digress. So yeah, outside of health, outside of this, possible world ending this weekend with the snowstorm or possibly just flurries, I think life has been pretty chill. I mean, like I said, God's been putting his foot on my neck and I don't know what I did to deserve it. Like I just was trying to come in 2026 very, demure, very mindful. And for whatever reason, the Lord decided to flip the tables on me like he did in the church. And my life is just, I don't know. Like even today, I was like, am I a content creator? Because between the podcast episode, I'm putting out Substacks for Sex and Context, which if you're not subscribed, what are you even doing? Like, do you even care about me? Do you even love me? What's actually happening? Yeah, I have a Substack specifically for my sexology business called Sex in Context. Please subscribe. Right now it's currently free. I do not charge a fee, but the way my finances are, I might be doing that in the next couple of months or so. I'm just trying to get into the groove of posting regularly, but there will be a point where I charge, there's a monthly fee for it, but right now it's free. Take advantage of it in the meantime, between time, because it won't always be free. But yeah, I do a Substack. I'm trying to do one every Friday. This podcast goes up every other Saturday. I've been posting regularly on my social media, specifically like my Instagram. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with TikTok because every time I feel like I want to get invested into TikTok, I keep hearing conversation about TikTok going away. And I just don't want to pour myself into TikTok only for my stuff to just go away. So usually I just recycle whatever I post on Instagram onto TikTok. So that way, if it goes away, I don't feel some type of way. But yeah, I'm over here having to create like plan out my stuff and I'm like, who am I? I do not consider myself to be a content creator, but obviously I am creating content. So yeah, I'm just trying to reconcile the idea that this is part of my life because it just feels weird and this was not on my bingo board to say the least. But yeah, I think other than that, I've been just chilling. I've been reading my books. In the month of January, I think I've read like about 6 or 7 books. Half of those I have DNF'd because they have been, I won't say terrible, they just haven't interested me. And I am someone that if I'm not having fun while I'm reading the book, I will close it expeditiously and be like, I'm not having fun. On to the next. Which speaking of, I need to get on my soapbox about the library real quick. And y'all might not care, but as someone who loves books, I need to rant a little bit. So I'm just gonna segue for a little bit. If you want to skip this part, cool. But I need to segue. I'm an avid reader, if you haven't figured it out. Last year, 2025, I read 70 books in the year 2025. And that, like, I know there's this whole thing on TikTok about like listening to audiobooks doesn't count as books, but if you're consuming, content that is from a book, I say it counts. But either way, I read 70 books last year. This year, I'm trying to do 70, 75, give or take. Here is my gripe. I do immersive reading. And what that means is I like to read either the physical book or the ebook while also simultaneously listening to the audiobook. So I like to be able to hear the characters read like voices, and it helps me kind of like, the whole point of it is like immerse myself into the world and be able to visualize it. And so it's not to say that I can't read a book without the audiobook, but my preference is to have both. Right. So we're all familiar with Audible. Audible, you get 1 credit a month. I forget the pricing, but it's like you get 1 credit a month. You can pay like $15, $16 to get an additional 3 credits a month, all of that. That's fine. That's Amazon. That's how you set it up. Here is my gripe. There are 2 other apps that I use. The first one is called Libby. Libby is through your local library. You go get a library card, you set up your card on the app Libby, and basically it allows you to virtually check out ebooks or audiobooks. Now, the problem that I have is my library is small. And so if there are certain books that I want to read and they don't have it, then just like when you go to a Jamaican restaurant or a Caribbean restaurant, me not have that. We don't have that, okay? They don't got it. And so you're just stuck. Or if it's a popular book by chance and they only have 3 copies, but 25 people have it on hold, then you got to wait 6 months until the book is available. You know what I'm saying? That's just the nature of the game, especially again, if you live in a town where the library is smaller. So that's the first, app that I have. Then there's a second app called Everand, aka Scribd. And if y'all are hearing this, I hope y'all understand my gripe because I'm upset. I'm shit. There is a app called Everand. Their whole bit is that they are better than Audible because for $13 a month, you have access to as many ebooks and as many audiobooks as possible. Versus Audible, like I said, you only get 1 credit a month. And the only way you get additional credits is if you pay more. Cool. I was into Everand before they changed their name. It was originally Scribd. Cool. I had access to all these ebooks. I had access to all these audiobooks, all the things. I'm about to give y'all my gripe and my rant. First, I want to rant with Everand. Everand has this new system now that you pay $13 to access all these books and things for 30 days. So then why, in God's good name, in the last 10 or even sometimes the last 2 weeks, y'all take away the books that are in my list and say, hey, we are withholding these titles until your next pay period? What the crack? Why are you holding my stuff? I've paid y'all my money. So why do you think you can withhold the books that I want to read, the audios that I want to listen to until my next pay period? And sometimes they'll be like, oh, you've maxed out your books for the month, and so we're withholding these until I didn't even use the app this month. So what the freak are you talking about? What are we actually talking about right now? So you just took the books that I have on hold and you put them away. I can't access them until my next pay period. Fine. Whatever. I could really go off about that, but I think that's the stupidest thing that y'all ever done. I didn't have that issue when it was under Scribd. I don't know what Everand is about, but y'all need to fix that immediately because it's my book. I paid for it. I should be able to access them whatever I want as long as I keep paying because y'all have no problem taking the money out of my account. So why are y'all withholding books from me? Okay? That's my gripe number 1. Gripe number 2 is with the library. Okay, I get it. We have a really crappy president. Mango Mussolini is, doing his whatever. And I understand libraries a lot of times, they go based off donations, they go based off of budgets and all this other things. Here is my gripe with Libby, right? Or not even just Libby, with the libraries. As I said, my library is relatively small. So when there are certain books that I want, either 1, they're not available, or 2, they have a long hold. So then I looked into trying to look at other libraries in my state or in other states, right? For example, my parents live in Florida. So I'm like, okay, let me see if I get a library card in Florida. Guess what, y'all? Because I don't live in Florida, they make you pay a non-resident annual fee. And this ain't no cheap fee, mind you. They talking about $25. They talking about $50. They talking about $75. I saw one state, it was $100 to pay annually to have a library card as a non-resident. I said, who's paying for this? Not I, said the cat. Who is paying for this? So now I gotta pay for a library card? Yes, I get it. I don't live in that state. And so I'm like, but there should be some other system. I'm fine, if it was a flat fee, right? A flat fee of $25, cool, I'd pay for it. A flat fee of $10, $15, $20, I'd pay for it. But you want me to pay an annual fee of $75? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because obviously the more library cards you have, the more access to other libraries you can get. And then that means that opens up the books you have access to. So it's if my library doesn't have it, I can go to the next county over and see if they have the books, or I can go to Texas and go and find their library and see if they have the book. You get what I'm saying? I can go to another state, see if they have it, and allow me to read. Nah, this is part of the agenda of y'all just want people to be dumb. Because what do you mean I gotta pay $75 annually for a non-resident library card? This is ridiculous. For some of y'all who are not readers, this may not, you don't understand the gripe. But as someone who is an avid reader, who loves books, who doesn't always have the ability to go to Barnes and Nobles, or which I prefer to go to Barnes and Nobles or other indie local bookstores versus Amazon if I can. If I'm, strong armed, then I'll buy a book from Amazon. But my preference is if I'm going to buy a book, I'm either going to go to Barnes and Nobles or I'm going to go to a indie local bookstore and buy it because they obviously need the money more than Barnes or Amazon. But I don't always have the finances to go and buy a book. So I'm like, let me go to the library because that's what it's for and use other resources. Now y'all trying to charge me 25, 50, 75 doll hairs? It's ridiculous. Like, I am so mad. Like, I've been livid for this about 2 days now. I have been so livid for 2 days. And I was on the phone with my mom about it. She was like, yeah, it's ridiculous. And my sister's like, both of y'all are ridiculous. Mind you, she's a literary agent. Her whole job is books. I'm like, you should be just as mad as I am. And she's just like, well, nobody told y'all to read 100 books a year. I'm like, okay, and what about it? The world is on fire. You know what I do when the world's on fire? I diamond paint, I play games on my iPad, and I read. And I watch anime. Like, these are the things that keep me insane. If y'all don't want me out in these streets committing crimes, let me read my books where somebody else is committing crime and there's no jail for it, okay? Let me read my books where I'm in a fantasy world that this isn't real. Let me read my books where two people are falling in love and it's enemies to lovers or, whatever the case may be. I don't want to be here. So let me get my escapism and stop trying to charge me for my escapism. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to get off my soapbox about that. But that's really been pissing me off for the past couple of days is the fact that one, y'all are charging people astronomical prices for non-resident library cards. And Everend deciding that y'all want to withhold. I'm not withholding my money from y'all, so why are you withholding titles from me? Make it make sense, okay? Anyways, let me calm down. Let me woosah because I could go off on that for probably a good 20 more minutes, and I'm not. Let me calm down. Let me relax for a second. Let me pose. Let me tranquilo. Pose. Wusa. Anyways, so yeah, I'm gonna get off Sorin's life update because that's pretty much just my all that I got going on. We'll see if I can get a solution to this library situation because I'm in a tizzy, as y'all can tell. I'm so upset. Anyways, let's get into today's topic. I hope y'all enjoyed the lightheartedness of the first half and my little rant about books because I don't know if the rest of this episode is going to be as lighthearted. And I be trying, y'all. I be trying. But since the Lord put his foot on my neck, I have no choice but to put my foot on y'all's. And I do it lovingly. So today's topic is actually one I talked about in I believe it was last Friday's Substack, January 16th. And we are just going to do a deep dive into it because obviously I'm not going to assume everybody here has read my Substack. But again, if you're not subscribed, I need you to go and do that kunya right now, immediately, because I put a lot of time and effort into it. And so I would really appreciate it if y'all would take the time and go check it out and go subscribe to it, share it with your friend or 2 or 3, leave comments, all the things, because this is a community. We got to talk to each other. We got to engage. So yeah. I mentioned this again in the last episode. We are talking about breakthroughs and how my pastor is on this series called Breakthrough, and we have been in the main scripture of John 10:10 that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and life more abundantly. Again, he uses life to the full, which I think is the NIV version. I like the life more abundantly because there's something about the word abundantly that just gives a little bit more razzle dazzle to me. It gives a little bit more vim to me, okay? So in this particular sermon, he comes from John 6, and it is what I like to call the fish fry miracle, where Jesus basically takes, the loaves of bread and the fish, and he feeds the 5,000. And obviously this miracle shows up in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But he specifically pulled it up in John because there is a certain aspect that John talks about that's not referenced in the other Gospels. If you're not familiar with the story, again, it is, like I said, basically a fish fry. It is Jesus. He's been talking to over 4 or 5,000 people. They are hungry, right? And Jesus is like, we need to feed them. And the disciples is like, we ain't got nothing to feed them. Jesus, turn these people away, send them home, let them fend for themselves, essentially. And Jesus is like, no. Again, this is my version of the scriptures, so don't take it like verbatim. But he basically is like, hey, we need to feed my sheep. And so they find the fish and loaves of bread, they break it, and they have enough to feed not only everybody, and I think the scripture says specifically it's like 5,000 men. It doesn't include the women or the children. So I imagine it's probably a good 10,000 people who were there, and they were all fed. And there was enough left over that there were 12 baskets for each of the disciples to have to take home. What then happens is Jesus then goes away, which I think Jesus going away after each miracle shows a lot that we need to sometimes replenish our own cups. I am not going to go down that rabbit hole because call me Alice, I will do it, but not today. But the part of the scripture that my pastor really focused on was he went away and ended up like on the other side of like the lake or the river, and the people then followed him. And they were like, oh my God, we want more of the bread. We want more of the food that you've given us, because this is just like the prophecy of when the people of Israel were traveling to the promised land and Moses asked God to give them manna. And this is like the same miracle. And so Jesus is basically talking to them and saying that, yes, this is bread, but this bread will not sustain you forever. And he talks about how he himself is the bread of life. And my pastor, child, when Jesus says, I am the bread of life, or, in other scriptures, he talks about that I am the living water so that you will never thirst anymore. We think of it as like a singular moment. So after we go over the scripture, my pastor is basically saying, when Jesus tells us that he's the bread of life, when he tells us that he's the living water, that we will never thirst anymore, what Jesus is telling us is that he desires to be the only thing that satisfies us, not as a one-time thing, but as a continual, everyday request. I don't think I've ever thought of that scripture that way. We've all heard Jesus say, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever, drinks from my cup will never go thirsty. But I don't think I ever thought about it in a way that Jesus desires to satisfy my soul, and not just to satisfy my soul on a deeper level. And he talked about obviously our desires, which is what this whole breakthrough series is about. It's about understanding what is your strongest desire, what is your deepest desire, what's driving those desires. And so I basically talked about in my Substack, I'm like, what is keeping us from living that abundant life? What is keeping us from really embracing the fact that Jesus is that bread of life? And that's what I'm just going to focus on, is Jesus being the bread of life. What is keeping us from actually embracing that and anchoring ourselves into that concept? One of the things that Jesus wants to do, not only does he want to be savior, not only does he want to be, our provider, not only does he want to be our comforter, he wants to be our satisfactor. He wants to be the one that, instead of turning to the things of this world to complete us, to fulfill us, to fill us, he is like, I want you to turn to me. Maybe like me, you have been looking for things in this world to satisfy the deepest parts of us. You know what I mean? We look for money, success, family, relationships, sex, right? Because that's what Sex in Context is about, is understanding how sex fits into the creation story, how it fits into the narrative that God created sex not as something to be dirty or that it's a sin thing, but that it is part of the creation story. But I think we pursue a lot of things believing that somehow it will fulfill this void in us. And that's not true. That's not a reality. That's not true. Yeah, you get money, but if you're still insecure, you're just an insecure person with money. If you're someone with anger issues, you're still an angry person with money. If power is what you desire, you're still an insecure person with power. If it's fame you're looking for, you're still someone who seeks attention and fame, and you're a people pleaser with fame, right? None of the things that you think are going to somehow fix you actually can fix you. We tend to lose the reality that like there isn't anything physical in this world that can actually fix or fill that void that is in us. And I love that my pastor said that sin is really just a misguided desire. It's, again, I've said this ad nauseum, and I hope you hear me when I say that desire is not a bad thing. Desire is not evil. Desire is not the problem. It's just a displacement of your desires that is the issue. And so here's the part of the sermon that really I want to focus on today is he talked about 4 idols. Because again, there are so many things that we turn to for relief, for identity, for safety, or comfort. And we keep feeding them, but they're never satiated, right? They're never satisfied. They've just never reached the point where it's like, oh, I think I'm good here. Like there's always more that you desire or more that you want. And it's funny, like he talks about idols, and I think a lot of us think of the big idols, right? We think of, like, if we think about in the Bible, the golden calf, or, you know what I mean? Like we think about these huge forms of idols, but there are small, quiet whisper idols that tend to sit on the throne in our hearts and in our minds that really belong to the Lord. And he basically broke it down because I guess like behavioral scientists have been able to like recognize that a lot of the idols that show up in our lives tend to fall under 4 categories. And again, a lot of these I have mentioned in my Substack, but I just kind of want to break them down a little further. And the 4 idols specifically talks about are power, pleasure, riches, and glory. Again, those are power, pleasure, riches, and glory. And each one of these idols are seeking something specific that you're trying to satisfy. So it's like, for example, power, you're seeking control. If you're someone that you're like, if I just have everything in order, then that's when I'll feel fulfilled. Pleasure is more or less about the desires, right? It's like, if I get everything that I desire, if I have everything that I want, if I have everything that I think that I need, then I feel like I'm good. I feel like I have everything that I need. Riches is more or less like you hoarding your wealth, whether obviously money. You know, I know people who they're like, the moment my bank account drops past a certain number, that's when you start to feel, you know, anxious, and you start to, you know, panic, and you start to like be like, okay, how do I get my money back to a certain number? And then lastly is like glory. It's like you care about people's opinions of you and how people see you, how people respond to you, how people react to you. What, like when people think of you, like what are the words they use to associate you? And so essentially it's like all of these things, like power equates to your agency. Pleasure is a form of comfort. Riches is, like I said, like a form of security, false security, if we're being honest, but in your mind. And then glory has to do with like how you define your worth. And it just, child, I didn't ask to be read for filth. But I think the fact that all of our idols could be put into these 4 categories is not by mistake. And our pastor was asking us to like basically like sit with the Holy Spirit and figure out like which of the 4 we sit in, which of the 4 like speaks to us. And, you know, you can easily sit between 1 or 2 of them, or maybe parts of you sitting with all 4. But I know for me specifically, I can see myself in power, where it's like I feel like I have to have control over everything, especially like I talk a lot about being the eldest daughter of an immigrant household, and how it, like, I was parentified very early, and therefore I feel like I have to have some semblance of agency and control over everything in my life. And I don't make certain moves or certain decisions without being 1,001% sure about what I'm doing. And there's no actual real way to be 1,001% sure. But for me, it's like, no, I need to know, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, what will happen? Like even starting this podcast, right? I remember the name of the podcast, Sodium Soapbox, being given to me and just dropping in my spirit. But then I took so long to actually release the first episode because I was like afraid. And, you know, my mentor, she basically was like, you're looking for a guidebook that gives you like how to not fail in podcasting. And there's no such thing. Like that doesn't exist in the world. Like you're going to have failures. Like that's just part of life. I think someone else put it in a different way. It's like you have a fear of being a new beginner, a fear of like starting something new, when it's like, oh, I like this is like podcasting was something completely new to me, and the idea of trying something new without knowing for sure that it was going to be successful frightened me a lot. And even to this day, like I put out these podcast episodes every other week, and a lot of times it's like I don't know if I'm saying the right things. I don't even know who's listening. Like it could be the one person every week who's listening to this podcast, and if it is one person, I appreciate you listening. The reality is like I have no idea who's actually listening, if anybody's listening, or if I'm just talking to myself to just hear myself talk. Like all of these things come into play every time I release an episode, and I think I just have to release the power and the control to be like, I'm just doing what God asked me to do until I feel like, okay, maybe like this doesn't serve the purpose anymore, that this is no longer what God wants me to do, that this is no longer like I need to pivot. I don't know. And I think this is teaching me consistency. This is teaching me to not pay attention to the numbers, right? Because in society, like with being a content creator or a podcaster, you care so much about the numbers that like if there are no numbers, you're like, what's the point of doing this? Because like nobody's listening. But I'm just trying to be faithful and diligent and continue with this. So I know power is definitely one of the idols that I struggle with. But I think my biggest one is pleasure. I think my biggest my biggest idol in my life has been pleasure. And not just like, obviously, again, like with a lot of emphasis on sex and sexuality, because that's the avenue that God has placed me in. But I think in general, like I'm someone, like I just told y'all, I just had a rant about 20 minutes about books. I will pay for books. I pay for indulgences, right? Like I get a paycheck, I'm on Amazon. What can I get next? I'm on, like I'm buying food. Like you could go through my bank account right now and see that most of the time I spend my money, it's on food, books, or other, luxuries. And for me, it's always because I'm like, oh, I feel like I have a fear of like running out. Like I don't know the next time I'm going to have money like this. So it's like, let me just go ahead and ball out and at least say that I had a good time in the meantime, between time. But that's not how I'm supposed to live, right? Like I'm supposed to be a good steward. I'm not supposed to live in fear or in lack and believe that like I'm not going to have money in the future. But like also, like I said, pleasure shows up a lot when it comes to sex and sexuality. And I will be completely transparent and honest. I struggle with lust. I struggle with sexual fantasies. I struggle with a lot of these things. And it felt weird to hear my pastor say like, I'm supposed to somehow give these to God because he's supposed to like satisfy that part of my life. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that doesn't make sense. Like my brain can't reconcile that idea. But the truth of the matter is that like, yeah, like I need to diagnose what is my real issue, what is my real concern, like why do I gravitate towards these things, like what am I trying to cover up, what am I trying to self-soothe, essentially, like what am I soothing every time like I chase a fantasy or lust or porn or emotional entanglements? Like what am I trying to receive or get out of these things? Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, I chase these things, but then I still end up hungry again. I still end up starving. I still end up feeling guilty or not feeling fulfilled. And again, I want to emphasize like none of these, like sex isn't evil, desire isn't wrong, all of these things. But when I seek them to replace God, when I seek them to be my savior, to give me worth, to put a balm on my loneliness, if Jesus is the bread of life, I'm basically looking for bread elsewhere. I'm looking to feed my soul and my desires elsewhere. And I had to put this into practice like not too long ago. I was feeling very just feeling very like not depressed, but just, feeling kind of sad, and because as I've been pretty honest about, like, I desire to be married. I desire to have a husband. And that's something else that I realized, like, I also have made an idol out of over the years. And I think that's part of, which we may talk about in the next episode, just like the indoctrination of being a single woman in the church and the conversations around it being like, you need to desire your husbands, or you need to put yourself in alignment for your husband. And the purity culture, doing the purity rings and dedicating yourself until you find your husbands. Or I saw something about like writing letters to your future husband and how that's a form of idolatry, because it's like if you're constantly focused on writing this letter to this future person that has no personality that you are able to like really speak to, that doesn't have a face, that doesn't have anything, like you're creating an image in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit, and you're like writing to them and you're obsessing over them. You know what I mean? So like that was something. Or like creating the list, right? Again, not saying that there's anything like wrong with creating an idea, like a standard for what you want in a husband, but I think there does get to a point where it just becomes your like all consuming. And I realized I fell into that, where I just wanted a husband so bad. Like I wanted to be married by 25, 30 and have kids. And when I didn't reach that, I thought like there was something wrong with me. I just, that was something hard to reconcile with, until I just, had to realize like if I had gotten married by 25, 30, child, I would have been divorced with kids and or probably in jail, because I probably would have, deleted that man, because I just was not healed. I just had toxic behaviors. I was a people pleaser. I was anxiously attached. I felt like I needed to mold myself into being somebody that was not me to get a man to like me and to appreciate me. Like I can admit that there was a time I was a pick me, and it just was like, oh, if this is what I have to do to get a guy to like me, then I'll do it. At the end of the day, I never got the guy. And so it's just like, well, I might as well be, not necessarily insufferable, but I might as well just be me. And the man who loves me is just going to be like, that's my girl and I'm gonna stick beside her, like type of thing. But yeah, I realized like desiring a husband for so long, like also just became an idol for me. And I had to learn how to let that go. And someone on TikTok recently said like constantly praying regularly for your husband, it's almost like begging. And God's children don't beg. And there's a scripture that says like, what type of father when their child asks for bread would give them a stone, or asks for, I forget something, and then gives them a scorpion? Like that's not a good father. That's not a loving father. And again, I'm not saying that you can't pray for your husband. You can't ask for God to cover them and protect them and to keep them from like the things of this world that you may be struggling with, that they could also be struggling with. But I think the consistent everyday prayer of like, God, please send me my husband, please send me my husband, please send me my husband. It is begging. It's not like, it's almost to say like God didn't hear you. I'm about to go on another rant, but marriage isn't promised to everyone. And so I think there's just a lot of disservice when it comes to the church that I don't want to say I have a gripe with, but I just think when it comes to marriage and singleness, and when it comes to the women in the church, there's just a lot of mishandling that is done. Whereas, like even the singles events, right? It's always women who turn up to these events. And then for men, they don't have these same conversations with men. They don't tell them like, oh yeah, like you need to be doing this, that, and the third. Like the men's conversations, like they talk about like, how do you grow in the church, work up to be a man of God, and to make sure your life is in order, and to do the things that God has called you to be, how to be all the things to just be a better man and better person in God. But I just don't feel like that messaging is provided to women in the same way. But that's, again, another topic for another day. I definitely want to talk about the fact that I think for me, desiring a future husband for so long, in a way, for me, was probably idolatry. And I don't think God ever punished me for it. I strongly believe that God loves me and has been very kind and very gentle towards me. But I think when talking about this idolatry, I can see how my hunger and thirst to be married, I don't want to say all of it was of my own. I think I just was indoctrinated between my mother, between the churches that I went to. I think it just was a part of my upbringing that, and then of course it's like once you're in your late 30s to 40s, they're like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, you need to put yourself out there. You need to do this, that, and the third. It's like, yeah, but when I was in my 20s, y'all told me not to go outside because that's the devil's playground and ain't no good men outside and this, that, and the third. So like you just get mixed messaging up until now it's considered too late. But Yeah, I think with pleasure, I have just come to learn that it is an idol for me. I had a really low, I don't want to say low time, but like I had a struggle like moment where I was struggling with like lust. And I just was like, in any normal situation, I would kind of just like suffocate it and just like press it down and be like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel these things. This is not godly. This is, God is looking on me with disgust, which is false, obviously. But those are the feelings that I would have. And then I decided, you know what? In the past, when I've stifled my feelings, what ends up happening is after time, like I would either fall into sin and watch porn, or I would just become angry and just, depressed and all the things. And I just was like, I don't like feeling like this. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to journal. I am someone who loves to journal. I have a lot of notebooks. I'm trying to save the trees and journal in my iPad. It just doesn't feel the same though, I'm not gonna lie. I just miss pen to paper, so I think I might get back to that. But I love a good journal, and I journal a lot of my prayers, I journal my thoughts, and I said, you know what? I think this time around I'm gonna do that. And I did. I journaled every single thought and feeling that I had that was just coming up. And it was weird. I'm not gonna hold you, I'm not gonna lie. It was weird telling God like my lustful thoughts and my feelings and what I was thinking and what I was desiring and things like that. But I wrote every single thing down because the reality is God hears them, right? God hears our thoughts. He knows our, thoughts afar off. He knows our heart's desires. So it's not like, oh, he has earmuffs or earplugs in, and it's not till you say something and he's like, oh, you talking to me? Like, he already knows. It's just that God is a gentleman. While he may in a sense be eavesdropping, he's not gonna barge into your thoughts unless you invite him. And so I did. I was like, God, this is what I'm feeling. This is, the thoughts that I'm having. I'm struggling. I'm this, that, and the third. And I just wrote it all down in my journal. And surprisingly enough, the moment I wrote the end, not the end, but like I closed it off, I felt better. Like I almost felt like a weight just was lifted off of my chest. And then part of like as we've talked about, like specific obedience over vague intentions, I told my sister about it. I didn't give her all the details, obviously, because that's, between me and God. But I talked to my sister and I talked to another friend about it. Again, I just felt better. And this was something I would have never done. I would have never journaled about my feelings, my lustful thoughts, my desires. I would have never journaled that and talked to God about it. I would have never shared it with people in my community. And again, when I say that, like, I'm not sharing it with everybody named Mama, but I think like God has been very intentional about who I should share these thoughts and feelings with. And so I felt comfortable enough to kind of give that context to them with. Yeah, I just remember feeling just so free and so light. And I went about my business. Like I got up and just went back to doing whatever I was doing. Like I just wasn't stuck in those feelings and those emotions and those thoughts anymore, because I was like, I am going to redirect them and give them back to who they belong. God didn't give me my sexual desires as a punishment. In the right context, in the right spacing, these are beautiful, these are good. He called it good. But right now in my singleness, like I need to find ways to redirect it, find things to do. Like I said, in this case, like I journaled. And so I made a video about it on my Sex and Context page, but I'm just sharing it with y'all. If you are someone who, like me, maybe struggles with lust and sexual fantasies or porn or whatever, and you have those moments where you're just like, I'm trying to fight it so hard. One of the things my pastor said is that like, instead of trying to quit an idol cold turkey, you need to find something better to replace it with. You can't quit a bad habit. You need to just replace it with better habits. And I think in this situation, that's what I did. Instead of allowing my lust and my sexual fantasies to overtake me and to lead me down a path that I know I have gone down and have ended up in, just felt empty, felt disgusting, felt guilty, I said, I'm going to go down a different path, a path I've never ventured before. It was surprisingly a lot more freeing than I thought it would be. Again, it felt embarrassing. It felt weird. It felt crazy to do this. But then the end result was like, oh, I feel better. So yeah, if you are in the same shoes as me, I recommend maybe journaling, or if you're not a journaler, do a voice note or talk out loud to God about how you're feeling. Again, I think sometimes we feel like when it comes to sex, and talking about our lust or porn or anything like that, we feel like really icky or embarrassed to talk about it to God specifically. But it's just like, he's in the room when it's happening, right? Like, he's not closing his eyes and blushing at the idea. It's like, God created sex and he said it was good. It's just that once sin came into the world, it just made everything distorted. And so it was like, why not have that conversation with him? Why not invite, one or two people that you fully trust and can be vulnerable and transparent with in your community? Again, I'm not saying share it with everybody, but I think there needs to be a level of accountability, right? Share with one or two of your friends, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going on. Let them pray with you. Let them pray over you. Let them intercede on your behalf. Don't allow the enemy to kind of isolate you and separate you and cause you to stay in this vicious cycle, in this loop where you're just like in this negative headspace. Then you stumble and you fall and you're just like, oh, I'm worthless. I'm crap. I'm this, I'm that. And it's just like, God doesn't call you any of those things. God just wants you to come to him as messy, as falling apart, as whatever to him. And he's just like, I love you all the same. My arms are open to you. And I receive you just as you are. So yeah, I think learning and recognizing that pleasure for me, again, is an idol, I think has given me new perspective. It's helped me to come up with new strategies and how to address it and how to navigate it. And I say this not as someone who's like, oh, now that I've done that, I've mastered this. Pleasure is no longer my idol. I can kick it off the throne and put God back in there. No. This has been something I've struggled with since I was 7. Like, I have struggled with lust, with porn, with all of this since I was 7. This is not something that is going to happen overnight. And I know that there is freedom on the other side as long as I just take one step at a time towards that freedom. So I say that not with saying that like, oh, if you journal or if you do a voice note that, oh, you're never going to have those struggles again. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting new results. And I think this is literally where, if you're looking at insanity as a circle, introducing something into that circle so it stops the cycle. I think this is just the first step in that. And so, yeah, my request to you guys who are listening is to try something different this time around. If you're, in a place where you're struggling, invite God in. Do something that you would never do. Just see how things unfold for you. You might be surprised how much better, how much lighter you feel at the end of it all. So, yeah. I don't know. I hope today's episode makes sense. Sometimes I just feel like I'm rambling and there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm actually talking about. And other times I'm like, oh, that was a really good thought. I don't know. But I hope you, as always, just hear my heart, hear my thoughts when I'm just conveying all the things that I'm going through in real time. Like, nothing I'm telling y'all is things that like I'm speaking in abstract. I am speaking in real time. This breakthrough series has been causing me to face myself in a way that is not fun. Is not comfortable, but I recognize is healing for myself, for my community, for my friends, for the people who God has deemed that sex and context is for. I've been in a place already where I would fight God and be like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm don't take this as resignation, but it's more a submission that is like, I'm tired of fighting God. I'm tired of wrestling with God and trying to do things my own way. Because what ends up happening is I end up right where he wants me to be anyway. So either I could take the long way, like the Israelites when they had to go 40 years to get to the promised land, or I could take the 2-week route. Right? Like, I could get there one way or the other. I've just decided to stop trying to fight God on a lot of things. It doesn't mean that I don't be, pouting and I don't be stomping my feet a little bit, but I'm gonna go. I just might complain along the way. I'm like, God, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna still do it anyway because I know what it's like to try and do my own thing and realize like, oh, that actually blew up in my face and was not what I wanted it to be. So yeah, I just advise you, if I could give any advice, is if you're having those hard times, try something different. Reach out to your community, reach out to God, and just see how you feel at the end of it all. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you enjoyed today's episodes. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear, out of the four idols, power, pleasure, riches, glory, which one do you think you fall under? My pastor is supposed to go over each of the four in depth. And so I definitely will try to come back and talk about each of them in detail, probably more so in my Substack than I will on here, just because like I try to do the Substack weekly, and then obviously I do these bi-weekly, so it may just end up being that like power and pleasure get lumped together, or riches and glory get lumped together, however the case may be. But I just would love your thoughts on today's episode. You can reach me on one or the other of my Instagrams. That would be Sorin's Soapbox, which is SORINS_Soapbox, SOAPBOX. Or you can reach out to me on Sex and Context IG, which is Sex and Context, SEXINCONTEXT. I toggle between both of those. I would love your thoughts and opinions and comments on today's episode, or if you read any of the Substacks within the following weeks. Let me know your thoughts and comments on that as well. Again, how was your new year so far? What are your thoughts on the four idols? What are your thoughts on pleasure specifically? How is that? Do you think it's an idol in your life? And in what way, how does that show up? How do you plan to embrace the fact that Jesus is the bread of life and desires to satisfy and sustain you? And how do you plan to take that into account into your life? But yeah, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for tuning into another episode. And until then, your girl is off her soapbox. See ya.